Hello, my name is Rackneth. I code roguelikes for a hobby, and today we will be discussing a relatively new framework that has come out just before the 7-day roguelike competition, which happened back in March. Um, this is the Malwoden framework for JavaScript. If you wish to write a roguelike in JavaScript, this is a new framework, and I figured we will give it a try together. One thing I noticed about the documentation when I went to try this out is that there isn't a a good there isn't really a good getting started or tutorial. It tells you how to install it, but not much else, and that's probably just has to do with the fact that there are so many ways to build a JavaScript project that it is kind of a nightmare. So what I will do is that I will build what I believe to be a good framework for a JavaScript project like this. And I will leave a link to a public GitHub. In fact, we'll create the GitHub in this video that you can clone and use for your own projects. I will make an assumption that you have installed NPM and Node.js and know the basics of how to use them. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to do is make a directory for our project. And then we'll go ahead and make an NPM project here. Alright, with that out of the way, with that out of the way, now we can get our dependencies. We will be using Webpack and some Webpack tools to set up a good workflow. So what we're going to do now is we're going to install we're going to install Webpack, Webpack CLI, Webpack dev server, and HTML Webpack plugin should be all I need. Save those as dev dependencies. And then NPM will go and get all of this. Again, we're not necessarily going for best practices here. We're just going for something that will get us up and running fairly quickly. And I'm going to cut while NPM goes and downloads all of that. At least I think I am. No, it's not going to take as long as I thought. Okay. All right. All right. So NPM has installed all of our dev dependencies. Then we're going to do another install of Malwoden itself. Okay, and now that we've got all our dependencies installed, we're going to open the folder in, well, I'm going to open it in Visual Studio Code. You can use whatever editor you'd like. I prefer Visual Studio Code for writing JavaScript. So we have our package.json with all of our dependencies in it. And the first thing we're going to do is create two directories, one called source and one called dist. This is, again, we're just doing plumbing for the development environment at this point. We'll get to the actual library in a moment. And now we're going to create unsilly. We're going to create a Webpack configuration file. That will help us out with all of this. And if this isn't your first rodeo with Webpack, you can skip all this. In fact, I'm just going to cheat a little and copy from my previous attempt at doing this, just to make things a lot easier. Basically, what's going on here is we're configuring Webpack to set up a dev server. To tell it where our output is going to be, and tell us about our resources. Once you get this set up, you shouldn't really change it all of that much. You should just be able to write code. But if you do have questions about the Webpack config, you should definitely hit up the Webpack documentation. Alright, so now that we have done that, another thing that we will need to do is create our main file. And again, I'm going to do a little bit of magic and do some copying and pasting. This is our basic hello file. The basic idea behind Malwoden is that it creates a canvas that emulates a CP, a code page 437 page, which is the kind of page that's used for Dwarf Fortress specifically. Quite a few other roguelike emulators use this code page. So it's a CP437 emulator. This is basically bare minimum hello world kind of stuff. Again, this code is, all of this code is going to be on GitHub. But once we have our main.js in and saved, there is one thing we need to do. Specifically note that this image file, we need to put that in our source. That file you can actually find in the Malwoden repository itself. It is in the example pages, and I highly recommend using it because right now, none of the other code page 437 files that I happen to have access to, because I play a lot of Dwarf Fortress, work at the moment. So that is something I'm going to have to work out on my own. Which is not what I wanted at all. Hello. There we go. Apologize for this. Okay. And once we have our font file in here, the last thing we need to do is create an index.html page in here. This is going to be our template. And through the magic of copy and paste, I'm just going to, it really is minimal. If you know more about JavaScript and you want to do something more ambitious, you can certainly do something more than this as a template, but this is, again, bare minimum to get us going. And at this point, we should be, actually no, we need to set up our NPM scripts. You do that in package.json, And we'll have two. We're going to add two here. We're going to have a start, which is going to just open the program. It's going to compile everything and load it from a dev server and immediately display it in our browser. And that command I apologize, I need to find that command. There we go. And now we'll have a build command that will actually build our projects and put it in the dist folder for releasing. Okay, now at this point we should have everything good to go. We've got our main.js with our onload function, and I'll go into this in more detail in a moment. We've got our index.html, which has a bare bones template and an empty div for canvas where it's going to actually load. And then we've got our webpack.config.js. It's just going to tie everything together and make our build process super easy. So now I'm gonna open a terminal here and then just go npm run start. And what should happen here is that it opens, which it does. And we get our test. I have my browser on another monitor, just so you didn't see that open yet. But now this is what we get, and I mean that's the super fast let's get going start. And I'll go ahead and terminate this, and then we'll go a little bit in depth into what actually is going on here. Like I said, Malwoden is a CP437 emulator, and what we're doing is creating a canvas and putting that we're creating a div to mount the terminal, our virtual terminal on. And these display options basically specify the parameters of our terminal. There's a little. I'm using a little bit of a Webpack hack. You will notice that I put my PNG file directly in the source. That's because apparently the canonical way to include assets in your Webpack files is to include them directly, and what the actual variable would be the translated. It becomes like a hashed. The file name gets hashed, and that's what this becomes. Is image URL. If you weren't doing it this way, you would actually have the relative path to your font here. Mount node is just the HTML node. Width and height are self-explanatory. It's the width and height in tiles of your terminal. Mount node is where on the HTML document we're getting mounted. Char width and char height are the width and height in pixels of each character in your tile set. They have to match. You cannot scale these up. You cannot scale these up or scale them down or anything. So if you want a smaller or a larger font, you will have to find a file that has a smaller or larger font. Because if you scale these up, the image will become distorted because it's going to be cutting stuff where it shouldn't be cutting from. We pass these display options to terminal.retroterminal from the Malwoden library. And then then we clear the terminal to get rid of anything that might have been on it. And then we write at the terminal, and then we render it. The documentation for Malwoden can go into more detail about these. I'm literally just learning this today, and I'm just throwing this out there, hoping that it will help people get into this library, because I think there should be more libraries to help people write roguelikes easier. All right, so like I said, with that done, we have our hello world up, and we should be able to go from there. Um, One of the reasons why, by the way, that I like to use the NPM Webpack server is that that was silly. One of the reasons why I like doing it this way is that with the Webpack server, I can make changes. For example, let's just say I want to change this to... I can make changes, and then they will be immediately reflected on the site. So you can get instant feedback as to what's going on. Everything will recompile for you, and you can see changes immediately. So yeah, that is that. The skeleton for this project will be up on GitHub in a few minutes. And again, I encourage you to visit the authors of this little library, and I may do more videos in the future on actually building something with this. So I hope you all have a good day, and happy coding.